Imagine a world in which switching from ESXi to the Nutanix Cloud Platform is an exciting journey as well as a technical procedure. The good news is, we live in this world now, and Nutanix Move is what makes it happen. Hello, I'm David Teague, Technical Market Engineer at Nutanix, and today we're going to walk through how to do a migration from ESXi to Nutanix AHV on the Nutanix Cloud Platform. So let's start this journey right now. We're going to start at our Move dashboard. On the left, you can see the environments that have been created, and these are some of the examples of the possibilities that lie ahead. But hold on, the magic starts when you choose to blaze your own trail. There's a button in the upper left corner that opens doors to innovation and does more than merely start the process. The Add Environment is a world where putting up environments is an experience and much more than just a simple click. So let's get started. Once we've clicked the Add Environment, we're now going to select the environment we'd like to add. We're going to choose VMware ESXi, which means we need to add the vCenter that we're going to use. The environment name can be whatever you like, and you will need an IP address or the fully qualified domain name, or FQDN for short, of your vCenter or a single ESXi server that is connected to vCenter. If you choose a specific ESXi server, you will only be able to migrate VMs that are on that server. Next, we'll need a username with the correct permissions in vCenter. It does not need to be an admin level user, but it does need permission to perform some of the VM actions, such as powering off and taking snapshots of the VMs. The Move User Guide has a list of the permissions a Move user needs to migrate a VM off of ESXi. Once you're happy with your settings, you can click Add. Next, we're going to add our Nutanix Cloud Platform environment. Again, you're going to choose Add Environment and then select Nutanix AOS. You will use the Nutanix AOS environment if you are using Nutanix AHV, our hypervisor, Prism Central, which is Nutanix's multi-cluster management, ESXi on Nutanix, or Nutanix Cloud Clusters, also known as NC2, on AWS or Azure. Again, we can set the environment name to whatever we like, and then we're going to need the IP address or FQDN of Prism Element, the local cluster management interface on Nutanix clusters, or Prism Central. If you choose Prism Central, you will be able to migrate any Nutanix Cloud platform that is managed by that Prism Central. You will also need a user with the right permissions for Nutanix, and you can find these details in the Move User Guide as well. Once you're happy with what you selected, click Add. With our environment set up, we can now create our first migration plan by clicking on New Migration Plan. We will give the plan a name. The names do need to be unique, so keep that in mind if you plan on running many different migration plans. With our name set, we will click on Proceed. Now we're going to select our source. Depending on what your source is, this will determine what your targets are. This is all broken down in the Move User Guide and also the Move Overview video on the Nutanix University YouTube channel. Since we are moving from ESXi, we're going to choose our vCenter environment. Then for our target, we're going to choose our Prism Central environment. This allows us to migrate to any of the Nutanix clusters managed by Prism Central. We're going to skip selecting a project, but under the target cluster, we will choose our NC2 cluster that is running in AWS. This migration plan setup will look the same if your destination is a Nutanix Cloud Platform environment, either on-premise or in AWS or Azure. We will then select the target container where we want the VM's data to be stored. And once we're happy with our selections, we're going to click Next. Now we're going to select the server we'd like to migrate. We can filter the list of servers by typing part of the name. I know the servers I am migrating start with DT, so I'm going to type that in the search box in the upper left. I can now see the 3 servers I want to migrate. The other 2 are grayed out because they are templates, and they cannot be migrated unless they are converted to VMs first. I'm going to select the 3 servers, which are 2 CentOS 7 VMs and 1 Windows 2016 server. You can select up to 50 VMs in a migration plan when migrating from ESXi. With our selections made, we're going to choose Next. On this screen, we can set our destination networks for the VMs to be migrated to. The networks will need to be already configured on your Nutanix cluster. You also have the option of setting a test network. This should be a network that is not routable to the source VM, because if you choose to do a test migration, it will migrate the VM without powering off the source VM. So if it is on a non-routable network, you will limit the risk of causing any conflicts. With our network set up, I will click on Next. On the VM preparation screen, we have several options that we will go through and that you're able to select. You can choose to do a manual preparation, which will give you scripts for Windows and Linux that you will need to run on the source VMs. We're going to leave it on automatic, which will run these scripts for you, assuming you have permission to do so. The script will save the VM information and the static IP if you have one set up, as well as install the drivers that are needed when the VM is migrated to Nutanix.
Under Guest Options, you could leave the default settings, which will retain the static IP if it is set up, and uninstall the VMware tools on the targets after the migration is complete. Below that, you're going to need your credentials. These users will need to be administrators for Windows or have sudo access for Linux. You can also use PEM certs for authentication to Linux. The last option is Override Individual VM Preparation. If you click on that, you can choose the options we talked about earlier for each VM, allowing you to customize which actions are run on the VM if needed. We will not change anything, so we're going to click on the X to exit this screen. Once you've set everything to your liking, you can click Next. On the VM settings screen, the first option is to set the VM's priority. This controls the scheduling order and allocation of network bandwidth for the VMs. You usually do not need to change this. You can also select the time zone and choose to retain the MAC address of the VMs. Retaining the MAC address can be helpful if, for example, you have a licensing program on that server that is tied to the MAC address. You can choose to skip the CD-ROM addition on the target VM if you don't want to have a CD-ROM attached to the target. This can be important to comply with some security requirements. You can choose to apply Prism Central categories to your VM. This can be important if you're using certain features of Prism Central. We're going to select the default category for apps for now. Under the VM migration type, if you'd like the option of changing the VM's name, memory, or other options on the target, you can choose Configure Target VM Properties. If you don't want to change anything, you would leave the Retain Source VM Properties select. We're going to choose the first one. You also have the ability to set these settings individual like we showed on the previous screen. If you want to start the data seeding at a specific time, you're going to need to select the option to set a date and time for when the data seeding is to start. We're going to move on to the next screen, where we can see a summary of the migration. We can choose to save, which will mean we can start the data seeding later, or save and start, which will start the dating server immediately if we did not set a time for it to start on the previous screen. We're going to choose save and start. With the data seeding started, we will need to wait for it to say ready for cutover when we hover over the column under status. With a little help of video magic, we can see that it shows ready to cutover. We're going to click on in progress. This will open the plan details page, and we will see the different options we have for the VMs in this migration plan. If you set up a test network in the migration plan, you can select test actions and create a test VM to test the migration without modifying the source VM. If you've already created a test VM, you could recreate it if something has changed with the source VM, or you can delete the test VM. If you click on VM configurations under one of the VMs, it will open a screen where you can adjust many of the options for the VM, such as name, power state, amount of vCPUs, cores, and memory. We don't want to change any of that, so I'm just going to click under VM migration type and choose Retain Source Properties. You have the option of cutting over a single VM, many VMs, or all of the VMs in the migration plan by making different selections. We're going to select them all and choose Cutover. You'll get a message telling you what is going to happen and make sure that you want to continue. The first step is to power off the source VM, which will take the VM and any apps on that VM offline. It will also disconnect the source VM NIC and add a note with details, which we're going to look at later. The time that the VM will be unavailable will depend on how long it takes Move to sync the data with the last snapshot. The default setting is for Move to take snapshots every 10 minutes, which will generally keep your outage time very low. You can adjust the snapshot frequency in the GUI. You can learn more about snapshot frequency and bandwidth throttling if you need it in the Move user guide. We're going to click Continue to start the migration process. Move will quiesce the source VM, then take a final snapshot and sync the data. Then it will start configuring the target VM. When View Target VM appears on the right, you can click on it to open the location where the VM has been migrated to. While that is happening, it will be performing cleanup operations on the source, but the source VM is not deleted, it is just powered off. So we're going to select View Target VM, and we're able to see the VM on the target Nutanix cluster. If we click on Launch Console to open a console window, we can check if the migration has been completed successfully. Let's open up the vCenter GUI and look what happened with the source VMs. There is a note left on each VM with the time and date of the migration and what migration plan was used to migrate the VM. It's also disconnected the NIC. These can be a lifesaver if someone does not know that a VM has been migrated and goes to power on the VM. Hopefully they will see the note about the migration, but if not, even if they power it on, with the NIC disconnected, it should not interfere with the new VM that is running on the Nutanix Cloud Platform. We're going to go back to the Move console. With all the VMs in the migration plan migrated, the plan status will say complete. We can delete this plan if we like. You do not have to delete the migration plans if you want to keep a record of what VMs have been migrated.
So that completes our migration journey from ESXi to Nutanix AHV. As you've seen, Move manages your migrations and removes any headaches and worry with its easy and reliable process, whether you are migrating 100 or 1,000 VMs. If you'd like to get hands-on Nutanix Move for yourself, head on over to the Nutanix Test Drive site. To learn more about Nutanix Move, click on the video below or search the Nutanix playlist on the Nutanix University YouTube channel.